Yes, Rich, you need a Mac. Hey, everybody. Anybody, I don't remember how I did these. Welcome to another episode of Tea with Rich. I am T, and I am with my buddy and forever guest and co-host, Rich Lyons. Rich, how are you doing today? Rich, that's
I'm
right.
good. Good to see you, TJ. Happy to be here, as always.
And we have a guest today, and I'm super fucking psyched because I have known Adam for a very long time, longer than Adam has known me. But Adam Grohs, business owner, former agency lead, former PAB member, former developer, now current developer, now entrepreneur, and working 120-hour weeks. But how you doing, Ad?
Doing great. Great to see you both. Super excited to join the pod.
How's my Miami? I figured I would bring a little low cut shirt and a little bit of Miami flowers to the thing.
I love it. I love it. Looks
You're
good.
showing a lot. I mean, you're showing a lot of chest hair. That's a lot. I mean,
Can
you
you
got a
see
lot
it?
going there.
It's white. I didn't even think it would show up here.
I told you I'm showing the worst team in baseball shirt today. Go White
Yeah,
Sox.
the White
Worst team
Sox.
in all of baseball. 19 wins.
That's
Whatever.
Chicago for you. So anyways, Adam, we're super psyched to have you on here. As you know, the format here is pretty freestyle. I love that we all three were on the pad for a number of years and have danced around circles and like talk about OGs getting together and shooting the shit. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know it's a late afternoon for you, but we're pretty psyched. I don't actually know where this dialogue is going to go. I do have a couple of questions to try and keep me on track, but I'm going to be honest, I already fucked up the intro. So I'm not sure how to get that back on track. But Ad, how you been lately, bud? You're down in Miami, right?
Doing great. Yeah, enjoying Miami. We're sort of swinging through the early summer that we get before everyone else, and then a bunch of crazy tropical storms, and now we're back to perfect.
Rich, what have you been up to, buddy? I know you've got a pretty crazy schedule.
The girls were actually in town, so it was kind of nice to have Father's Day with both girls. So
Oh
that
shit,
was
Father's
exciting.
Day. I
Yeah.
forgot it was Father's Day. You're right. That was cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. They're in town for a high school friend's wedding this coming Saturday, so they came in town all week working from the house here, so that's exciting. So it was good to see them. Father's Day I had to shed a few tears when they wrote me the sweet cards, like brought me to my knees basically, but very sweet. It's nice to have older daughters now that are very grateful, so it's very sweet.
I actually had all the boys here on Sunday, which was nice. And Shannon made us all, the four of us, just sat at the island while she made charcuterie boards and let us kind of just hang out and eat charcuterie for like an hour at the island. Which the four of us haven't been here together for
Wow.
a meal, like maybe in a month or two. So it was actually the first time we all kind of got together. And Jack hand wrote me a card. So I used to always make the boys hand write cards. Uncle Brian's birthday, my mother's birthday, anything for Shannon, any holiday. I'd give them a piece of paper, fold it in half. They had to do all four sides. And Jack wrote me a card, and I literally I lost my mind and cried like a baby when I read it. So which was good, but. Adam,
Speaking of crying like a baby with him, how was sending him off to college?
he's not gone yet. I did. So
Or
that's funny.
orientation.
We went to orientation. So listen to this. So we go to Boston on Tuesday night, right? You can't get a hotel anywhere in the fucking city for less than 16, 1700 bucks because I don't fucking know. The Celtics weren't even in town.
Celtics. Oh yeah. I
No,
don't
they
know.
weren't playing. They were in fucking Dallas. So the $300 hotels were an hour outside. So of course I booked them a room at the Four Seasons like a dummy, and we stayed there on Tuesday. On Wednesday, dude, I was fine. It wasn't bothering me. Like I was cool. We went out to dinner on Tuesday, and we got up on Wednesday, and he like grabbed his stuff because he did an overnighter. My youngest son Jack. And we get over to Emmanuel College and we pull in the parking lot, and I thought I was gonna fucking have a stroke. I got wicked anxiety immediately. I got super emotional. It was like somebody was crushing my chest, and it happened in like 5 seconds. So I'm like, he looks at me and goes, "Do not cry when we get out of the car." So I'm like, "Okay, Jack, I won't cry." So he did a day with a bunch of people. They put him in a squad, and I did the day, and then he stayed overnight, and then he had the whole day Thursday of activities, and it was cool. It was. I'm glad he's going there. I like the school. I like the staff.
Great.
I like everything about it, but I almost lost my mind. Paul, I was fine, dude. We literally just like went by the security guard. I said I'm a parent for orientation, and as soon as we got by the security guard, I literally thought somebody had put a clamp on my chest. So, but it was good. And then Shannon came down Wednesday night and stayed, and we went out and had dinner and hung out and did some nice things. But how was Stepfather's Day? You have a dog, right? I mean, did he get you anything, Adam?
He did. We had a nice meal. He's actually here in the office with me today, but he's sound asleep right now. Maybe
Is he?
maybe he'll join us later.
I love that dog when I was down there. So, Rich, I don't know if I told you, but I went and spent a week for my birthday in Miami. Zengel met us down there, and we went down and spent time with Adam. Adam made me a from scratch, surprised me. First time anyone's ever made me dinner, ever, like that. I walk into his house. We're supposed to go have a glass of wine and then go out to dinner. And Adam had made me a from scratch beef Wellington proper. And it was the best beef Wellington, the best dinner I'd ever had.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
Well,
can't
you guys
thank
did
enough
well
for
in
that.
Vegas. I'll tell you, that was we talked about that in a previous podcast, but you guys did it right in Vegas. That was awesome.
That's right. That was after I was in Miami for my birthday, wasn't it, Adam?
Yeah, it was funny. You and I had been talking about getting everybody together, cooking a dinner in Vegas. In the meantime, Shannon and I had planned to surprise you with a home cooked dinner at my place for like the last couple of months leading up to it. So it was pretty funny. You were all in on what are we going to make for the guys while we're in Vegas? How are we going to pull it off? And I'm like, man, he's going to be so shocked.
That's
I had no idea.
awesome.
I walked into your house. You had a fully set table. I was like, "That's weird. Adam's got a fully set table all the time in his house." Like, and now I can't cancel my Palmez wine subscription because I need my goddamn knife for my 1 year anniversary in August. But anyways, it was all good. So we're a little deep. We're 8 minutes in. Adam, why don't I feel like everybody knows us. It's not like it's a big deal. Adam, we got to let you do an intro. I can't properly intro you. Why don't you take a few minutes? This episode's already sideways off the gate. So, Adam, why don't you give a background? Because I've never told the story about how I met you and all of that type of stuff. It's a pretty interesting story. I'll see if I could say it without getting upset. But why don't you give a little background and an intro? Because you might have one of the most diverse, colorful
I agree.
backgrounds in the technology and agency space that I of anybody that I know.
And you got to give a plug for agnoStack. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I'll avoid the plug as much as I can, but appreciate it. And I've been dying to hear the story from your end. So I guess long winding background. I sort of stumbled into the early days of the internet. Bizarrely, had studied nutritional research, molecular biology in college. Combined with being pretty crazy outgoing, my friends growing up always thought I was going to do like Tony Little infomercials selling exercise equipment or something. But wound up working in the early days of the internet for a company that wound up becoming Razorfish through 6 different mergers and acquisitions later. Sort of came up through the ranks from a technology side, played all sorts of different roles in the mix there, and then eventually, left there, became the global CTO of Huge, took over for one of the co-founders of the company after they got bought out by IPG, left there to go over to Sapient, joined the team there in kind of a crazy off-the-reservation role, bringing together their marketing capabilities with their commerce capabilities, and then, left there and started an agency focused around commerce innovation, running that for a few years, and then spun a product company out of there called agnoStack, which is focused on kind of e-commerce, post-purchase, everything after initial purchase. And I've been running at that for the last couple of years ever since. And then the sort of fun middle road in between is my very first job out of college was the first salaried employee in a startup that we built up to 100 and some odd people. I played almost every role in the company, from technology, marketing, sales, front end development, back end development, creative work. And then that sort of played forward later in my career. I wound up developing at Sapient, their CMTO university, to teach technologists about marketing and business. I teach a class in typography and color theory. And then since starting agnoStack, it's been really interesting to get back to my technology roots. So I spent like a decade doing general management, running a couple of offices, running business development, growth, partnerships, all that fun stuff. And then wholesale now, back in the trenches, learning the latest modern set of technology development.
So I love that. Give me some years, because I don't know that we've ever talked about that. So you just went through a pretty short order, what I would say is at least a 15 or 20 year career. So roll back that a little bit and talk about like what years were you at these companies. So I don't think people fully appreciate how early you were in the heyday of when things were really taking off. Like you talk about going to huge, but I think you were huge when they were double digit numbers and went to thousands, right? So talk about the errors or the years that you sort of moved through these organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I joined what was IXL back in, I think, late 98, 99 or so, after having spent, like I said, a year or two working at a startup. And, that was crazy boom time before any of the before the bubble burst, as it will. I think my hiring week at IXL was like 60 people. Then it was like 6 weeks later that had dwindled down to like 20, maybe 6 months in, all of a sudden it was like hard stop. And then we went from, at the time, was like a 3,000 people or so when I joined. They merged with our biggest competitor, who was Scient. We became Scient with the red eye.
Totally remembered all that. Crazy.
Oh yeah. And then literally, bottom imploded. So we went from about 6,000 combined people right in the middle of the boom to under 200 people, 190 some odd people, laid off 98% of the company. I was around through all of that. And then, really exciting to build it back. So when you were down to sub 200 people and you remembered all the incredible people you lost, was really tough. At the same time, every human being who was left at that company was, they talk about 10x employees. They were 100x employees in there. And then the idea of, as we built it back to, 300, 500, 1,000 people, how do you keep that level of quality in there as we, rebuilt? After all that chapter, they got bought by Publicis. I didn't want to be part of a big holding company, which we could talk collectively.
Then it came back around, right? Came back around.
Totally. And then left there, joined Huge. Huge was not huge. They were 120 people all in. Technology wasn't a big part of their business.
What year did you go to Huge?
It was a good 10 years into, I spent 10, 12 years at Razorfish. So whatever, 99 through a decade and change after that.
Yeah.
They were 100 and change. We grew it to about 1,200 people, opened 5 new offices across the globe in like a year and a half, 2 years. And then, took that, joined Sapient at the time. It was like 16,000 people when I joined, which was mind boggling, with the idea of, join a place that's too big to be bought. I don't want to ever be part of a holding company. Several years later, they get bought by the same exact holding company and then smashed together.
So when did you join Sapient?
About a year and a half after Huge or so. I'd have to go to LinkedIn to pull up the year.
But like 2010-ish, it sounds like, right? Yeah.
Yep, right around.
We can ish. It was so long ago. We don't need exact dates.
Yeah, it's in that mix there. So like a dozen years or so at what was Legacy Razorfish, couple of years at Huge, 6 odd years or so at Sapient, smashed together Sapient and Razorfish. But the funny part is, collectively 20 years at, or 19 years or so at would have been, Razorfish itself, with a small stint in between at Huge.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I was trying to figure out, TJ, you were going to talk about when you met Adam, but I was trying to figure out like when we would have met, because we probably met on the pab, right?
We had danced around in like conference circuit. I think we really got to, know each other, around the pab. And I found it hysterical on the Catherine episode where you guys were, talking about with her, that being her first pab, TJ, it being your first pab. For me, I was on the pab through 3 different companies at that point, way back in 99. I knew Stefan and Ulrika and Wayne and them from old Intershop days, was like person number 6 trained on Demandware when it launched, super early days in the pab. When I left and joined Huge, Huge wasn't doing any commerce work, no Demandware work. They weren't a partner. They asked me to stay on the pab, even though Huge didn't have a seat. They were like, that's your seat. That's not Razorfish's seat. That belongs to you. And then, sort of whole circle when Sapien came back around, Ryan Scott actually was on the pab for Sapient. And then we wound up sort of combining. I took over some of the pieces on there from him as, he moved on own
That's
a
what I
bunch
was trying to figure out, because I was like, I knew you way before Sapient, and that's what I was trying to figure out, the pab connection. But I
Yep.
mean, I need to say, and TJ, you can make your comment, but I remember when you were talking, TJ, about coming on the pab and being intimidated, like I thought you, Adam, and well, I shouldn't say I thought because you probably are. I was like, this guy's the smartest guy in the room. Like for real. Like I just remember like the way that you knew the technology, but you also knew sales, you understood business, like because there was kind of this, like I was not technology, right? I mean, I was technical trained, but I wasn't in the details of Demandware, so I was more on the business side, but you understood all the sides. That's why I think that we aligned so well together, right? Because it was like, we're talking about an ecosystem, we're talking about business, but you were deep into the technology as well. So that was awesome. I remember, like TJ was talking about being intimidated. I remember being like, that fucker Adam, man, that dude is smart.
I appreciate the kind words. I definitely was in the trenches of the platform from almost day zero.
Well, it's interesting because now coming full circle with agnoStack, I think you were telling me, I don't remember when we were having the dialogue, probably Miami at some point, one of my trips down there, but that you had got out of doing development for quite some time and was really a sales executive and a sales leader or biz dev, whatever the fuck they call it now, but that you went back and sort of reoriented and re-taught yourself and got sort of reoriented as a developer. So you're back doing development now, correct? Like you're inside writing code every day. You're doing DevOps, you're doing your builds, you're doing the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I mean, literally, if I were to be honest with myself, probably a good decade of going from, super deep roots in technology. I always prided myself on saying to a customer, during a sales cycle, I was always involved in sales. I would say to a customer, listen, I'm the only human being in this room who's actually still going to be with you when this project is done. So if I promise you something, you can actually believe it. And that, came to fruition a few times in the mix there. And then, probably a decade at some point, you wind up moving up, managing people, managing teams, getting involved in more sales, kind of upfront architecture. And then when I, started particular, the agency I was running before agnoStack, small business. It's like you got to do everything. You got to do sales, marketing, you got to do development, delivery. And then with agnoStack, I mean, I probably spend a minimum of, 4 hours a day writing code, probably a maximum of 15, 20 some days, unfortunately. But fully back in the trenches, I mean, taught myself from the ground up, serverless, microservices, React development, whole new modern stack that I never would have gone down that path if I was still in the consulting world working with the legacy bunch of tech that we've all come up with.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that background. I think that's amazing. And I think it's safe to say you haven't, was it all commerce related or was it digital agency related? And then in the latter years when I got to know you, you were pointed at commerce specifically.
So that's actually one of my favorite parts about like the long tail. So in the early days of Razorfish, I basically had what, similar to John Pinella's role today, I basically ran commerce for Razorfish from the beginning in the earliest days where there wasn't much commerce work. literally, I was like banging this drum of like, we should be helping more people sell stuff online. It was like, oh no, we're designing the constructs of what does a nav contain on the internet, or like what's basic ways to manage content. And at some point it's like, hey, there are businesses out there who are making money online. Imagine if we sold to them how much easier it would be to justify our expensive costs. And now full circle to see, how much of those core businesses for, IPG, for CAP, for Publicis are made up of commerce, or, how important commerce at the core is. I remember the early days of like banging a drum and being told like, why do we care about this? Let's go focus on Adobe. Or why do we care about this? Let's go focus on user experience. And
Yeah, Ben, the three of us have been at it for so long. It's hard to identify an era anymore. So
True.
So I appreciate that intro, Adam. I think that's amazing. I think it's good for people to kind of know that don't know who you are. We'll get to the story of my side of the story of meeting you. It'll have to be heavy editorial verbally. But while we're on the commerce topic, why don't we sort of spill a little tea here, because you and I have chatted quite a bit about headed and headless and composable and this fake battleground. What are your? I would love to hear your thoughts here and your loves and your hates of this confusion of terms and reality, because people have made each of them out to be something they're not. And it's hard to get back to center line right now because there's so much dust in the air. I'd love a couple of minutes of your perspective on kind of where things are at.
yeah, absolutely. You said just a short couple of hours on it, right?
Yeah.
There's that much, I'm sure.
We can do part one and part two.
No, I think, there's a lot going on. I'd love to get your guys' take on it. I know we've kind of, danced a little bit in our group thread and on LinkedIn on here, but I think for me, Rich, you had a really interesting perspective on, the fact that everybody's talking about sort of, headless and, that whole composable world, and it's losing sight of, solving business problems. And I actually think that it's not. I think what's missing or going on in the market today is using a lot of the terminology around the space, whether it's API first or headless or composable, in order to mask like fundamental shifts in architecture. Really, really big stuff. So I didn't realize until I got to agnoStack of the difference, because I was caught up in the same world we all were, where people were talking about, API first. People were talking about the importance of headless without realizing what had happened. And the real shift that happened with serverless microservices architectures, in my opinion, is the ability to take, individual things, add something to a cart, update a price, apply a promotion, like really fine-grained things, and deploy those as microservices, like actual endpoints in the cloud, as serverless functions, so Lambda functions or Azure functions or Google Cloud functions. What that does outside of the tech side is it allows you to not have to have business operations that plan for demand. So think about that. You're a large retailer, you're doing holiday prep, you're sizing your servers, you're figuring out what you need, you're ramping up all this stuff. The shift to a serverless architecture for me, or composable architecture, is literally removing that as a cost in the business. So if I could say I can guarantee whether I have a single person on my site or 150 trillion people at the exact same microsecond, knowing that my performance won't change by a second, that's a shift in the foundational technology. Absolutely. It is also a shift in the core business fundamentals. And what we were talking about in the likes of Salesforce or, some of the others, are putting lipstick on a pig. You're literally talking about API first, and BigCommerce, who's out there talking about headless and composable. They've got the worst underlying, architecture behind that thing I've ever seen. Terrible API model. Some of the even commerce tools stuff that's been very forward leaning in market. The fundamentals around this are still not there. But if you take it to its purest form and say, will serverless, will microservices, will composable change what's going on in the business? The answer is yes. I can infinitely scale
Interesting.
without having to plan for the cost nor of the performance. And then you parlay that into the end user, which is improved performance increases revenue.
So why do you think there's so much confusion out there right now, Adam, and so much kind of such a pissing match between, everybody, right? You got Commerce Tools on one side, BC on another side. We've got Salesforce, we've got Magento, we've got Shopify out there. Like, are we just in kind of a wonky sort of that wonky teen years here, or is there literally a misunderstanding of what this means and what its potential is, and is there too much static in the air?
It's a weird one. I'm not sure what's causing it. I do think it's some of the weird teenage years. But I think one of the big things that's happening is, it's like grown-ups hearing a cool new term going on and then starting to bring it into their vernacular and sounding stupid. It's like, oh man, the vibes on that platform, the vibes in this, or, it's a desire to want to use the, words that are going on in where the industry is moving by people who aren't there. None of those legacy players actually have an architecture that, that matters. The closest I saw to it was the, early stuff at Molten, or some of the stuff that Alakai and the Vue storefront guys are doing. Like, it is blazingly fast. So you have like the words being commoditized or being used by Salesforce, Adobe, BigCommerce, Commerce Tools, even going so far as to start, pushing on the Mock Alliance without the fundamental like core of the platform changing.
So Urban Dictionary sort of brush fire at the end of the day. Did you say Vue storefront, like Domingo, the stuff that Domingos is working on?
Yeah, the Vue storefront stuff, which funny enough now is mostly not Vue, it's mostly Next.js and React. The core underlying like design of that thing and the flexibility and scalability and performance is wild.
And that's all like sort of a Mobify competitor, right? That's basically a sort of a front end, explicit front end.
Loosely, I mean, the big difference is the way that Mobify worked under the hood versus the way they work under the hood. Yep. Mobify was literally like repainting the glass without anything that like improved performance. So they normalized the way that you brought in data. The Alakai stuff actually changes the front end experience, where you could take a legacy platform like Magento, run it through Alakai Vue storefront, and go from a system that didn't perform very well, wasn't easy to customize, wasn't easy to upgrade, to something that is blazingly fast in a super modern architecture and easy to customize and update.
I like hearing that perspective. I haven't had a chance to look at that stuff yet, and quite frankly, I've spent the last 6 months working on my grip and my swing tempo. But I love what Jeffrey's doing, and I love the story behind there. And it is interesting because I say Mobify because, PWA kit before that, it sort of looks like, smells like, sort of associates with type of thing. But that kind of is indicative of all the problems we're seeing in the commerce space right now, right? It's very much a Me Too thing. You got the Mock Alliance, many ants building a house and things like that. So I love that. Do you think there's room for a new platform? Like, what are your thoughts on this idea? Like, Shopify, like, what's next? Like, is there room for something, or are we going to move into this era of somebody finally doing a super app like WeChat or something like that? Like, what's your thoughts on the void that's out there? Because Shopify isn't going to be able to handle all the demand, right? Everyone else isn't going to re-architect. We already know that. But the reality is a lot of these platforms are not ready for this next era that's coming. So do you think there's room, or do you think Shopify is going to rule the world?
I think a little combo of both. I think there's room. I don't think that. So if you look at like the legacy, landscape, like Adobe's not going to completely rebuild that platform from scratch.
Correct.
Commerce Tools at the core of their product, in my opinion, isn't quite there yet. Really impressive, like underlying foundation. Love what those guys have been up to.
Isn't it just MuleSoft for e-commerce?
What's that?
Isn't it just MuleSoft for e-commerce?
No, it's actually, I mean, their core underlying, model. Like if you look at what we do, we normalize integrating with all the major commerce platforms in general. So
Yeah.
we see the differences in like what does an order look like, what does a cart look like, what does a customer look like. The underlying data structure in commerce tools, hands down, best in the industry. Really
Yeah.
great stuff. Salesforce platform, they're just moving enormously too slow. The idea of combining core with what's going on or the cloud create stuff coming together, it's got to be a ground up rewrite. The new entrants to the market, whether it's EP or Swell or any of those guys, I just haven't seen something that's going to really supplant the market. And then if you look at Shopify, the number one thing that I think a lot of people are missing, so you went from Shopify was for small businesses, that was easy to write off. And then, as they've sort of moved up market and hired more enterprise like salespeople, the biggest thing they've gotten right is their core foundational technology to be able to extend and customize the platform. It is the best in the industry, super modern tooling in a serverless microservices remote UI based thing. And that's why I think they're going to win for quite some time to come. And that's the part I think a lot of people are missing. It's like them moving up in enterprise isn't just hiring a bunch of enterprise reps or this or that. It's doing that and having the best foundational model. Like you go to the early days of Demandware, how many conversations were we all in where the answer was the product doesn't do that? But when they were moving up into LEA or things like that and working with us, the reason why, large retailers went there with the agencies around them is because you could customize and extend.
Right.
And the idea of, from day zero, they built a platform that was extensible.
You could do anything with it. If you could think of it, you could build it, quite frankly.
Totally. I remember Olivier did a demo for me at one point where he had built this like multi-user chat thing on Demandware. It was like it had nothing to do with commerce. Literally nothing to do with commerce. And then I was talking to Stefan about it one day, and he's like, yeah, we didn't call the company Commerceware. We called it Demandware. The idea of having this grid computing infrastructure, infinitely customizable objects, pipelines, pipelets, all the early, stuff before controllers. The core of it was you could build anything. And Shopify is the first platform that has both quick up and running in under an hour and the ability to infinitely customize to build for enterprise.
For some reason, I thought it was Ruby on Rails was its foundation. Did it start there and then evolve, or?
Exactly. So that's the big thing is, if you go back to the core, or like you look at commerce tools under the, started, I think, on, some Java XML stuff and has expanded beyond there. But absolutely, Shopify started there. If you look at their newest stuff, so what they call like checkout UI extensions or admin UI extensions, really, really, really modern serverless microservices underpinnings, React based front ends, flexible front ends, remote UI capabilities. It's super modern. And it's, I think it's going to win for a long time to come because of that. And especially in the enterprise space because of how you're able to extend and customize.
Wow.
Yeah, I just don't know if anyone's working as hard as they are to really listen and grow and expand in a meaningful, purposeful way. And I know that sounds weird and comes off weird, but, they're trying to do the right thing, it seems, from the outside. I'm an outsider. Obviously, I'm an OG on the SI side, but I've touched it all, but my history is actually with Demandware. So it's interesting to watch. I was talking with Ray Grady a few months ago about is it, should somebody go out there and build a new platform, right? Is it time for somebody to kind of think a little bit further out and a little bit more ahead? And Ray's opinion was like, why? But one has to wonder if commerce is moving into the commoditization stage as well, right? Is it, and what is next? And where is everybody heading? What is going to be that next thing that the agencies are going to actually latch onto besides AI? Because that's the buzzword of the last 18 months and probably the next 24 at least.
See, I think commerce has been commoditized for about a decade and change now, 10, 12 years. Well, honestly, core functionality. I remember the earliest days, like very early. I worked in a project in 2000 where we were literally like writing a shopping cart, like what a shopping cart was. We were working on like, threading and all this like really core foundational stuff. Like commerce is commoditized, period. What I don't think has happened enough yet is the idea of, how agencies continue to charge, real services fees for valuable stuff on top. So presume it's commoditized. Presume that you're not going to charge a lot to build something that scales better or that looks better or that has, better conversion rates. Take the foundational tools now and say, I can do that project for a tenth of what I could before. I still want to charge you, 9 times that for something. It's just the something shouldn't be to do the basics. The something should be to take that toolkit and go do something mind-boggling like we did in the early days of the internet, where websites weren't standardized and commerce wasn't commoditized. If the toolkit's commoditized, then you can actually go do amazing things. I mean, Rich, what was your like early, stuff when you guys were getting started with Cap? I know you said you were kind of a, jack of all trades, master of none, outsourcing stuff early on, but as you moved into doing your own, UX and tech work, I mean, how did that?
I mean, we were doing like the early days of the internet, right? I just remember we were doing Java, we were doing, it was all custom, right? Before Demandware, right? We were doing C#, right? And we were building commerce websites, but it was all custom, like back in the day. And I wonder, it's interesting what you're saying, Adam, because you've challenged my thinking at least a few times just in this talk. But do you think it's commoditized? Because I had this argument when I got bought by Cap, right? So that was 2017. So what's that, 7 years ago? And they were arguing with me that commerce is commoditized. And I said it wasn't. And I kind of convinced them that it wasn't. At that
played
time.
the game to convince somebody that wasn't either in my previous world. So.
Right. But I'm thinking though, is it commoditized because the feature and functionality everyone has now? Like what made it be commoditized? Because remember at one time with Demandware, it was so robust, right? You had features and functionality that other people didn't have, right? You could do so many different kinds of promotions and discounting, right? Remember, buy one, get one. I mean, there were so many things, but you couldn't do that everywhere else. Now, do you think that that's caught up? Everyone can do everything. So now what makes you special has gone away. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big piece of it. It's like, so if the things that I think a lot of, our legacy paths used to be able to charge a premium for was, we can make it scale better, somebody else can't. We can make it look better, somebody else can't. We can make it convert better from a user experience side, someone else can't. Or we know the ins and outs of, some secret sauce, how to squeeze more, margin profit out of a business, whether it's through promotions or subscriptions and all that. And once those are table stakes for anyone, then it's like, okay, well, you can either become a smaller agency and charge less. That's an option. Or you can say, what would somebody pay a premium for? Or what can I do with a commoditized toolkit that isn't cookie cutter? And that's where I think you're going to see another
all
wave
the link
of
cartridges and stuff, right? That was to bring in all these other features and functionality, to bring in recommendation engines and all that. But now all of a sudden they exist everywhere, right? So they're not special. But what about user experience? Because my perception still is there's some variance from a UX perspective. So I'm saying just design perspective, right? Because there's some shit design still out there. So what you do on the front end, and more than put lipstick on a pig, but actually create an experience that a customer will come back to.
Again, yes and no, not to always take a contrarian.
No, I want you to take both sides because I'm curious.
So what I've found in the mix there is like, so if your starter kit stinks, as some of the companies that we may have spent some time working with do, then it's like your secret sauce as an agency is go create great experiences with the kindling on top of there. If the starting points are actually really good, that becomes, a really compelling piece. I remember even in like the mid days of Demandware work, we had a customer, we built a beautiful experience in there. And then somewhere in like it was on demand where custom my account page, custom this and that, the UX team just forgot something that's like now just standard. Like everybody does it, and it was an embarrassing call. The customer was like, you know what, you don't need to be able to like update your password on the site. And it was like, well, I don't know, that just wasn't in the wireframe. Like we just forgot. And then it was like, well, if the starter kit had all of that and looked good, which I take the likes of, you know, some of the platforms today, specifically Shopify, some of those starting themes, even the paid ones, are better. They've got, you know, some of the world's best UX experts and designers working on creating those. So like challenge your team, which is like, hey, you know, do you stand on the shoulders of giants and take something that's already great versus starting from scratch? You know, it's a whole nother area of commoditization.
Well, that's really interesting because we used to do that when the wireframes got good from a demandware perspective. Like we used to have that argument all the time, right? Best practices is built in. Like don't fuck with it. And not just to build something that's pretty, but is it going to convert, right? So
yeah, but we all made a living on fucking with it anyway.
We did.
Absolutely.
And that was each of our things. You know, Adam would say, don't do these 4 things, do these 3. I'd say 4 other things. And I think it's interesting. I think one of the issues that I've had over the last few years is that we've romanticized tech. And I think I've talked about this in previous episodes or maybe wrote about it, but like, I think that we have a new era of leadership and board members and executive teams that aren't comfortable with a lot of the things being said and shown and talked about and don't have that sort of conversational comfort around it. And you can only be so authentic when you're at that level, and you kind of get lost. You just got to trust everybody. And I think the technology has been so overly romanced that we've lost sight of a lot of the other things on the enterprise side, right? And then we've got shop coming in like a locomotive right now, and they have been able to look at what everybody's done for the last 15 years and tune it a little bit. Like just even if you just polished up some of the old ideas and serialize them, which is what they've done, right? You've got some amazing power there. So it's going to be interesting. I hate talking about tech. I hated being in rooms for hours debating this fucking API or that API or this service or that service or this feature or that feature, because at the end of the day, it came down to like, you know, nobody wanted to talk about business. And I think since we've come out of COVID, we're in a whole new realm of people that were battlefield promoted that don't really have the street cred and the experience and the personal humbleness and comfort to really openly say, actually, I have no fucking idea what's going on right now with like any of my commerce shit. Like I change agencies every 14 months because it takes 12 for me to figure out they're not doing it right, and takes me 2 months to find a new one, right? My manager leaves every 18 months. You know, it's been interesting, and I don't think things have settled out in the last couple of years, but I love
what do you think?
I
mean, what do you think that, I'll ask both of you this, but Adam, you know, you can this could tee you up really well, but where do you think the new battleground is then? I mean, if it's not, I mean, the implementations can become easy, right? Shopify's making it easy. If you have a good theme, you don't need to spend a ton on design either. Integration still could sometimes be an issue, but maybe not. But does it pivot to, I've got 2 things. Does it pivot to demand gen, right? How do you get people to your site? Like how do you actually do performance marketing? Or does it pivot to, you know, some of the things that you're working on, Adam, like turning your, you know, customer service into a profit center versus an expense? I mean, where do you win, I guess, right?
I think it's a combo of both. So like our hypothesis as a business in the last roughly, you know, 8 years or so, there's been a massive shift in customer touch points. So historically, you know, a retailer would have, you know, typically, you know, 1 to 3 experiences with a customer upfront through the purchase cycle, and then 0 to 1 after purchase. Now it's often the opposite. So somebody will see an ad, They'll click through to a brand they've never heard of that looks cool. They'll buy a product, and then they have 2 or 3 touch points, maybe 4 after purchase. I want to check in. Where's my order? I had an issue with a product. So the idea of, actual dollars shifting in the industry from, pre-purchase, upper funnel, mid-funnel conversion to post-purchase, which includes, customer support platforms, which includes loyalty, which includes CRM,
Right.
is big. If you had a chance to talk to a customer 3 times after they purchased or 1 time before, would you keep spending money on filling the hopper up front and losing them after they had a bad post-purchase experience? Or would you focus money on making sure that you create loyal repeat business through, better customer experience, better loyalty? Easy answer. The other side in terms of like, where does it shake out for me is finally getting back to creating differentiated experiences. So if the baseline should now be cheap, I think that agencies who are going to win in the enterprise space in a composable, serverless, microservices, Shopify forward world are the ones who are going to do really game-changing, immersive things.
That's cool.
I was on a site the other day, like Shopify just included. Are you guys up on Passkey at all? Have you started to use Passkey?
Yeah.
Rich, I don't know if it exists on a PC, but
Yeah, I don't use it, so I'm good.
passkeys are the biggest change in technology, in my opinion. It's happened in the last 10, 15 years for the next 10 go forward. The idea of basically getting rid of passwords, using biometrics to be able to log in on the web, in apps, all of that stuff. And it's wild. The ShopPay made an update, in the last couple of weeks. I went to a website I've never been to before on my computer, went into their checkout, clicked on login with ShopPay. It said, do you want to use your passkey? I'm like, I don't even know what a passkey is. I was like, okay, sure. It pops up a QR code on my screen. I pick up the QR code with my phone, scan it on there. My phone uses my face to unlock the device and authenticate me, then sends my credentials back to the browser, pre-filled with my billing info, shipping info, and credit card,
That's
and
awesome.
single-click checkout. And I'm like,
That's awesome.
forget about that's built in at the core, but those type of innovations where it's like you can charge big money as an agency in the enterprise space to start to create really game-changing commerce experiences that aren't, let's go build your my cart, my order, my account page. Let's go build a better PDP. Let's go build a better homepage. It's like, presume that stuff's good. Let's go do something fun.
Remember when one-page checkout was like all the rage? Now it's no-page checkout.
Remember, the page was like this long. Remember, it was the longest one-page checkout. I mean,
You know how many times? And by the way, one page was usually like 3 tabs, and we've moved to no page. And I use Passkey a lot as an authentication method because I never know where I am and things
but
like
I mean,
that.
ShopPay is unbelievable, right? I mean, think about how Instagram has changed commerce in even another way, right? But I'll see something on Instagram, hopefully not too often, but and take a shot at buying it, right? Oh, that looks cool, buy it. It takes me 1 second because it's
do you
usually
know
a Shopify site. It has
Yep.
my information. Maybe it sends me a code at best. Usually, it's just like it knows who I am because I'm on my phone, and I bought it in a second. It's too easy.
Yep.
Do you know that 75% of people out there, maybe 80, don't even know that Shop Pay is a Shopify thing?
I do,
don't
and that's
know.
why I think it's brilliant because I think
Well, we're in the business.
any Shopify site, then you can buy so easily.
Correct. But most people, I've literally talked to people and they've been, yeah, I use Shop Pay. I'm like, yeah, that's like Shopify. And they're like, oh, it is? And I'm like, yes. And it blows people's minds. Most people don't know what Shop Pay is, believe it or not, guys. They don't know that it's Shopify's version of Apple Pay, essentially, right? My cretin like description. My answer to your question, Rich, is along the lines of Adam. I think the money and I think the future for all agencies and anybody is, I I think the tech side is becoming more and more commoditized. I think it's in the consulting, and it's in the mentorship, and it's in the strategy. I think that we're in a period where we've got folks running things and in roles where, pre-COVID and during COVID, it was really just hold on and ride it out. And now people have to really think and know and plan and design and build and execute on really quality experiences. And even beyond the experience, let's just say you pull it off, the metrics that you need to have and the optics behind the scenes to know what is and isn't working, it's a huge blind spot, I would say, with most brands. You can pick a few out and say they're very bright, but the reality is most brands don't actually know what they're doing. And I think the agency that's going to survive and the agencies that's going to do best out there in the future are the ones that are out there helping the business and its leaders and the practitioners within the business that manage and maintain these things understand and execute and think about their jobs a little bit differently. It's not about all the tools, and it's not about the tech. I wish we would just stop talking about the tech, because the tech is just the tech. There's a whole set of archetypes out there that are struggling to figure out what they need to do every day and how to meter it and how to report on it, and how to understand and learn it. So I think the money forward is in the experience side of it, but not the user experience. Of course, that's part of it. I think it's the experience of managing and maintaining and re-educating people on what it means to be in charge of a brand and the brand experience. To Adam's checkpoint, I used to have this Candyland map. We did it at Pixel and Rafter One, where, Adam, you made an interesting comment. I used to tell people it's like a Candyland game. We actually never know where the customer is going to drop in on the experience. It might not be the website. It may be a gift card that they can't figure out how to use, or a gift that they didn't like that came with a gift receipt. And the first interaction they're going to have is a phone call or an email. And that is so far down the worry chain for 95% of the brands that it's actually alarming.
Totally.
Nobody thinks about the gifting market, and I know that's a myopic view, but I always drew this like weird Candyland thing, saying they can drop in anywhere at any time, and it's very much one symbiotic membrane. Like you've got to have continuity on all these touch points, and you've got to have that visibility. And I think that's a big loss point with a lot of brands right now. And I actually think the agencies are struggling with it, because agencies don't typically worry about all those interaction points. And when they do, they're so massively siloed. It's like working with 6 different companies anyway. Oh, you're talking about your WMS system and the pick, pack, and ship messaging system? Yeah, that's not tied into customer service. And by the way, we have 3 customer service teams. Like, we have the website team, we have the
in-store team,
support to store, and then we have the returns and exchanges, right? Like, I know that sounds weird, but like, there's so many links that haven't been connected out there. So I think the future of any agency is in kind of bringing the Candyland map together, and to Adam's point, focusing on the totality of that experience and all the points that have nothing to do with the e-com site that in the retail store that most people are going to go. Because remember, those are the loudest people. The people that use email and make phone calls, they're fucking ruthless. They just are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was most mind-boggled by since starting this business, like, it's been great. I literally went from feeling like I knew a lot about the e-com side of the industry to feeling really humbled in not knowing a lot about modern tech, not knowing as much about post-purchase. One of the number one things I was shocked by, the buyer of customer support platforms, post-purchase, oftentimes loyalty, historically, from a lot of what we've seen, is like a head of customer service or a head of IT, and not a head of digital, head of customer experience, chief digital officer. I'm floored by it. I'm like, why would you go and spend an enormous amount of money on, advertising, awareness platforms, content management, commerce systems to convert, and then, somebody goes and has a really bad, let's say, customer support call center experience. I'm like, when that person comes in and is like, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on that. I'm like, well, I'll bet the guy who just spent $10 million on his website, who cares an awful lot about converting those customers, would hate if
Yeah.
that Candyland's first touch point was somebody picking up a phone and you had a really bad experience. They would be infuriated by it. Like, why doesn't the CDO, why doesn't the head of customer experience or user experience own the full life cycle, including customer support and loyalty?
Well, I think it's interesting because you made the
why?
point. Yeah, I don't know why too, but you made the point. I mean, if they see it as an expense and just a pain in the ass versus like what you said earlier, do you want that one connection up front or the 3 connections on the back end? You know, we all will say, and we know like your existing customers are your easiest customers to sell something to, right? But that doesn't mean they're investing that way, which is kind of crazy. Like what you're saying is, you know, we're so myopic on let's get new customers that we forget about our existing customers and don't provide them with a good experience. I think that's, I really heard you.
And there's some interesting like macro level trends. Again, I didn't know any of this coming out of my previous couple decades in the agency world. So generational stuff. Us, the 3 of us, we grew up. You buy from a brand that you've heard of because you trust that they make good product.
Right.
And brands were expensive to create, and you know this and that. Young generation consumers, you know, Gen whatever's after Z. I don't know, the younger consumers who are finally able to buy stuff. They, like, I think I saw a statistic like 80-90% of Gen Z consumers will buy from a brand they've never heard of. Our generation, it's like 10%. It's startling. So they'll buy from somebody where they just see an ad, somebody on TikTok being like, this thing is cool. Doesn't matter if that company doesn't exist, isn't real, is a fake brand, anything else. That's number one. Second one is one bad customer experience buying from a brand. Again, 90% of Gen Y and Gen Z consumers will abandon a brand after one bad purchase experience. So now you put those 3 things together. It's like, I'll try anything. If it's bad, I'll give up on it day one. And I'm having 3 times as many touch points after versus before. And it's like, that's just a different world than the systems that surrounded the ecosystem we came up in were created for.
Totally.
It's just different.
It is. And you know what's kind of fucked up, actually, and you guys hit on it, Adam, when you talked about the dysfunction in organizations, is that enterprise architecture at the company organization level is literally still 25 and 30 years old. Like customer service, retail is retail. The idea of a CDO is such a anomaly out there. In most of the CDOs out there, I'd say half to 3/4 of them are battlefield promotions, right? They're not really CDOs in the traditional sense of a CTO, COO, in my opinion. And it's all fighting. It's fiefdom fighting. So I think organizational design hasn't even been modernized for most businesses that are struggling with how to deal with this. And again, for any agency folks out there listening, like agencies can get in and do this. Like an organizational consultant is not going to get into a brand and have the dialogue that the 3 of us can have with e-tail, retail, customer service, fulfillment, and finance, right? Because you gotta have finance in there. Like we don't even need IT involved at that level, because once the strategy is in place, it should just be an execution plan. But it is interesting, and we went through organizational updates when we merged and brought the other roll-ups in, and it was shocking. I hadn't looked at an organizational structure in 30 years, and to see all these new models and how little they've changed was amazing.
I think it's part of, you know, going hand in hand with, you know, what it takes to stand up a brand in today's world, or, you know, a TikTok brand, sell a product, anything else. Like the young generation of people, you know, coming up today don't believe that there are any barriers or, you know, any of that. So it's like, if I can start a brand without any impedance to do so, I can gain an audience without any impedance to do so. And then I'm not encumbered by all of the legacy technology stuff that we just talked about. It's the reason why, you know, platforms for that next generation have to not be the ones that were for the previous generation.
Correct.
They're starting with a presumption of an old model.
Well, it's pop up, right? I mean, we're in a pop up economy now. Everything's a pop up. It might pop up for 6 months or 24 months or 36 months. Everything's a pop up. Everything's a roll and flip, right? Everything's a roll up. Everything's a PE candidate. Like,
Yep.
I mean, everything, right? Nobody's, well, I shouldn't say that. Most of the modern businesses follow the pop up and roll up and exit model, right? There's few folks that are really in it for the long haul, but no, that's all very fascinating shit. Um, Rich, you got any more questions on that topic?
No, I'm good. That was great.
This might have been the deepest
I think it
hour.
was.
My brain hurts.
I don't
Um,
even want to talk about technology. I'm like, I got questions. I'm like, what's the spiciest story from before you guys went through your Jeff Bezos glow up and became
Well, why don't we move into the let's move into the questions section because we went a mile deep and a mile wide on tech pretty quick. I just wanted to get a little bit on your headless composable because we've talked about it a lot, and you and I have very different opinions on it all. I think it's all flavors of the same water. I think we need to stop talking about water and start talking about all the nutrition that needs to come after you have water. But
Well,
Adam,
we
what
bitched
do you
about
want?
like, let's remember the customer, right? It's not about the technology,
Yes.
but
Well,
so
yeah.
to,
Well, there's billions of dollars on the technology side, but Adam, what do you want to keep talking on this topic, or you want to move to questions for Rich and I?
no, vice versa. I'm good. We can come back and dig into this. I do think specifically, I've got a strong opinion that actually the technology matters.
It does.
Specifically because of the new generation. So if I were building like a, ecom platform of today, it would be something that lets me like connect to, demand generation, influencers. It would let me automatically, look at demand and generate products on the fly. It would automatically adjust pricing. It would automatically handle SEO. It wouldn't look anything like the platforms that we know
yeah,
about
that's
or think
interesting.
about. And,
Yeah.
to the point of being, serverless, composable, microservices, blah, 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 it would have to be infinitely scalable. Like if I put something out on TikTok, it goes viral. I get 15 million people who hit at the exact same second to my checkout API. I
Which
want to
happens.
capture all 15 million of those damn orders. And that doesn't come out of an architecture like any of these legacy platforms.
Nope.
And that has happened, and that has collapsed people, and it's interesting because I love that whole concept, but then the enterprise is left in the dust because by the time you can get the enterprise to understand what that is and get it where it needs to be, that moment is already left, right? That's a kind of another interesting issue is sort of the drag that it takes to make meaningful decisions on good ideas. But I love that. Adam, let's move to the Q&A, the other side of the Q&A. I only asked you one question and that took 45 minutes. So, um, Adam, what do you want? Do you have any questions for us? I mean, usually we move to Q&A. Catherine and Victoria basically took over the entire episodes with questions. So, what do you anything you want to probe us on?
I got two ones that I definitely want to get through. One of them is really practical. It's a transition away from tech, and then another one just from a human side. From a practical side, the audience wants to know what's some of the tools that you use today in your day to day that you wished existed back in the day when you were running your own companies or earlier on.
Oh, before I had to buy Novell and everything else.
Yeah, like what's in your life day to day that you wish existed when you were running a company? What are some of the tools and products that you're using in your real life?
Dude, I'm telling you right now that Google everything is like a game changer, right? Like Gmail, um, calendar, docs, uh, spreadsheets, all of that stuff. Like I live there. Like that's literally where I spend every day. As a matter of fact, I just put a wine cellar in. This is how anal I am. and I have every slot in every rack in a spreadsheet, and I literally placed every bottle of wine that I have. Now I have 1,000 bottles of wine. I have 270 wines, and I placed them. So that
You
type of
got to get
stuff
on
was.
Stellar Tracker if you're not on already.
I am, but Seller Tracker doesn't allow you to map your bottles to your my racking, right? There's no they that particular they have slots and things like that, but I have too many wines, so I can't just go all the way across. I have to. It's more like a sink my battleship thing. So let's just talk about Google, for instance. We built something in '95. This kid Evan Karatzis was our first employee. We built something in FileMaker Pro to run our business. We built a billing tool, an invoicing tool, a time tracking tool, and a project management tool before anybody was even talking about that stuff in 1995. And we built it all in FileMaker. We called it Pixel Base. And we literally ran our business on it for probably 20 years. It was built in Cold Fusion. There you go.
Nice.
We moved it from FileMaker to Cold Fusion. So for me, an everyday tool that I use is I'm just a huge Google Docs, Gmail, Google Calendar person. I don't really dick with a lot of other stuff. I got little doodads here and there, but for the most part, my life revolves around my calendar, and I'm old. I still live in my inbox.
What's one doodad off the top of your list before we go to Rich?
I have these little books that I call notions. I don't have one here, but I have little notebooks, and I have a pen that I keep in the notebook, and that is like my everyday thing. Like I go back, I remember things better when I write them down, and I'm not always at my laptop. So I have a stack of very small notebooks, and I basically just I keep those forever and ever.
Love it.
Yeah, that's fun. I mean, you guys are going to laugh, but I still use Outlook. I don't know if anyone uses Outlook. I still use
Well, hold
Outlook.
on. You're also still on a Windows machine.
I'm still on a PC, so that's an issue for me. So, but I mean,
It's not a PC, it's a
I
Windows
run my
machine.
life, but wait, I run my life. You said your inbox, right? But I know how you manage your inbox. I manage my inbox very, very differently than you. Like I want to be under 50 every single day in my inbox.
Under
But
50 what?
under 50 in my inbox.
Wait a
I
minute.
move
Like
things,
unread or in general?
period. So here's how I manage my life in my inbox. Ready?
Hold on. Of
Just
all
wait, I'm going
your
to tell you how I
emails,
manage it. Listen, I
of
have
all your
folders
email, in all of your folders, how many emails do you literally keep 50?
only in my inbox. So here's what happens with the way I manage my life. Stuff comes in and I either address it right away and then file it, or I delete it, or if it's just a nice to have, you put it in a folder. But then I also go through all my sents. So my sent folder is only things I'm waiting to hear back from. So I categorize and I get rid of my sent or I delete it. So when I look at my day, there's stuff in my inbox that I have to do, and there's stuff in my sent that I'm waiting to hear back from. So that manages my life. I have to do the thing, and then if someone doesn't get back to me and it sits in sent for too long, then I'm going to hit them again and be like, hey, I never heard back from you. So my life is managed by this organization that I call my inbox and my sent folder. Everything else is in folders, so I know where to go to it. So people like you, TJ, and my other friends who have and my wife actually, who has tens of thousands of things, it gives me anxiety. I get anxiety. Like I literally have anxiety about that.
I have 32,761
anxiety.
messages in my primary.
Anxiety. No, I have anxiety just when you tell me that.
16,118 are unread.
Like right now,
I've got 60,701 unread.
Seriously,
on my phone.
You guys kill me. No, you kill me. And and if you look on my phone right now, just because we've been on, I have 12 unread texts because I go through all my texts too, but I have 12 unread right now.
Oh, dude.
And right now in my inbox, I have 80 7 items, so I got work to do because I have 17 unread that just came in while we're sitting here fucking, having our conversation. Fucking around.
In fairness, I do use Gmail tags, and I do use mark as unread in addition to setting reminders for things I need to go back to. But 60,701 in my inbox unread as we speak.
See, that
My
gives me
phone's got
anxiety.
52,000.
I mean, you know Scott. I think Adam, you probably know Scott, my friend
Yeah.
Scott. Like he's like, I don't care. Like if it's really important, they'll send it to me again. And I'm like, I can't handle that.
I have a weird ability to recall like phrases and dates and events, and I just do. Like I remember stuff. Like I can even search for photos by like the month I took them.
So, I mean, I have a very complicated file structure, right? I mean, I have folders and folders within folders, right? So my Outlook file structure, I have business stuff, I have organizations, I have personal stuff, I have, purchases. I put stuff in purchases. I have a folder on software and systems. I have a folder on travel. I mean, I have, and then within business, I have all these clients, and then within clients, I have stuff. So I know
So
where
I'll
to
tell you
find
what.
stuff. So I guess
Adam,
ultimately, I don't know how to search for things, is what you guys will say, because you guys will just search for it. I just know
well,
where to go find it.
why don't you just use search?
Because I want to, it gives me
'Cause he's
anxiety.
got
Like I
search
want to
on
touch
Exchange.
everything.
You
I
like
still use search sometimes.
do you keep all your clothes in separate drawers, or are you the one like you like the activity of like going to the drawer and looking in the drawer? Because
Yeah.
that's a thing.
I have my shorts in one drawer. I have white t-shirts in another drawer. I have other t-shirts I wear on a regular basis in another drawer. And then I have my old t-shirts in another drawer. I have my workout t-shirts in another drawer. I mean, it's very, so
So
back to your question. I mean, I think what has changed my life because I am on a PC. Anything that goes across, right? Like Google Calendar, like I do have a unified calendar, which is super helpful for me because then it's on my phone. But I also, and you guys will laugh at this too, like I use Evernote. And why do I use Evernote? Because I have it on my phone and I have it on my PC. And so, like, I run my life with Evernote, meaning more my to-dos, my day-to-day stuff. If like TJ, you said you're going to write something, like if I'm like, oh shit, I got to do that, I put it in Evernote. And so I have a to-do list in Evernote, like a business to-do list and a personal to-do list in Evernote. So it's here on my PC and it's here on my phone and it's always with me. And that's super helpful for me. And I'll have everything on there from, things I need to get done right away to, places I want to travel to, like bucket list travel places, or like I have lots of lists and just ideas, like next book I want to write, like just things I put in Evernote because it's with me across platforms. So I love that.
my wife does all of that stuff, and she uses Google Docs. Sorry, 2 more doodads I couldn't live without, and I wish I had. LastPass,
Yep.
game changer.
I don't even know what LastPass is.
It's the thing that you needed before you got into passkeys.
Oh,
yes. And it used to be Mint, now Monarch.
Yep.
Like I haven't balanced a checkbook like since I was like 19.
Good stuff. Love them both.
Cool.
Second question, non-work related, but semi-work related, I guess. Early days. So you guys, have both been in the game for a long time. Obviously, both had, pretty successful, exits of your company. I always find when I ask people for like advice around, what would you do different? It's always advice in hindsight. It's like, well, now that I've made some money, I wouldn't work as hard, or now that I blah, blah, blah. But like, what would you do if you could pick one thing to go back that you wish you yourself would have done differently? Like, what's a mistake you made, something that you regret that you would have done different in the early days at that moment, like knowing what you knew then?
It's funny. I'll answer TJ if I'll go first this time. And I was talking to this, and it's fresh on my mind, so that's what I'm going to answer. But early days, hiring salespeople and not really having an idea about accountability, right? Like, and the reason I say that is because we hired people and paid them too much, and then they just hung out, right? And none of their compensation was based on activity in the early days, right? So then we had a really hard time. They weren't that uncomfortable, right? And so they were just happy, and I was not happy, So it was like I was holding the anxiety, and they held no anxiety. So it's interesting because then later it was like you wanted to be someone to be more at risk. You wanted to hire fast, fire fast, but also you wanted to kind of tie activity into their base salary, and then they could have commission on top of that. But I mean, it would have made my life really a lot easier because we went through a few cycles of different early on inside salespeople, outside salespeople, and just didn't have a lot of success. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs that I talked to I was sales oriented, so it was a little different. But I mean, you guys probably talked to a lot of people who hire that savior. Like I knew so many entrepreneurs that like hire the savior, give them like a CRO role or a high role, give them equity, and they suck and they never sell anything. And then they're stuck, so it's like that concept of come in, prove yourself, sell some stuff. I'm counting all your metrics and then let's be successful and talk about that later. So, I mean, that would have saved me a lot of turns on the cycle.
What was your question again, Adam?
In the early days, like what's something that you regret / would have done different? Looking back now, but with the knowledge that you had at the time, not the knowledge that you as a much more successful person in hindsight had, but like what's something you go back and you're like, man, I really should have done X, or I screwed up X.
I don't have a lot of things that I look back on and like either regret or feel like I like disingenuously did wrong or anything like that. There's very, very few things when I look back. There are three very specific things though. In the beginning, I didn't know how to be a boss. I didn't know what it meant to be a manager. I was a hood rat that had skills, that started a business with a buddy because he asked me to. And I was a practitioner that was responsible for people and indirectly their families. And I wish I was better at it. I wish I had more empathy. I wish I was nicer. I wish I wasn't so hard on people in my early days. Like I was a yeller in the beginning, and I would call shit out when I saw it. And I actually, I've seen recordings of myself as a young leader and been embarrassed listening to myself in the recordings when I'm talking to my staff. So I wish I was better at that. And I think I've actually talked about this before, but I don't remember where. So that's one thing. And I regret that because I had some really good people that I spent some years with and mentored, and how they put up with me is a miracle, to be honest with you. Another thing looking back is that I wish I understood how important it was to pay people commensurate with their dedication and the mental effort that they put into the business, and I'm not talking like, tens of thousands of dollars more, but I wish I had, again, I was young. I wish I had a better appreciation for how important it was to take care of those guys and girls that really were dedicated to us, and when we could pay them. And you guys all know, because you've been in it, it's kind of a weird line to walk, but there are some guys and girls that weren't with us when we went through the PE and the acquisition that had to leave, honestly, because they could make a lot more money and they could get better benefits somewhere else. And we couldn't do much about the benefits because they're fucking expensive. And when you're a small business, you get railed. But the money side of things, I wish these folks could have come to me and we could have talked about it and tried to figure it out, because I don't think I fully appreciated the dedication that they gave to me. Now, don't get me wrong, I was dedicated to them, and it's not a slight even on me, but in hindsight, in hindsight, there's a bunch of people I wish were with us when we went through the massive growth spurt in the PE and the buyout. There are some people that deserve to be part of that, because we wouldn't have been the business that we were into and coming out of COVID that we were if it wasn't for the lineage of folks that got us there. So those are probably two things that I think I said there was three, but those are two things. I also wish I didn't. My third thing is I wish I appreciated how much my personal antics affected my staff members. Like, it's no surprise I've been arrested a lot. It's not funny, but I have, as an adult, in that, you know, there's a lot of stories about what my nightlife is like, even though you guys know my nightlife is ethical as it gets. But I wish I appreciated more what it looked like as a staff member, seeing these things happen to your friend and your boss and an owner, and the impact that that had, and the questions that they had to answer with their friends and family about a company that they were so dedicated to. So I'm constantly a little embarrassed about some of the bad decisions that I made as a younger adult.
I love it.
Fuck, that was a deep question. I didn't
That
even know
was.
that those were going to be my answers. I usually make Rich go first, but he jumped in front of me, so I actually had time to think about it. But
You went deep on that. That was great.
You know, my favorite part in general, it would always be, you know, people be shocked that we were, you know, friendly with each other or whatever. I was always unbelievably envious of both of you guys in the industry. Rich, you talked about, you know, last time on the series, you know, some of the folks on the pab who would just, you know, not say much, be sitting there like writing down the name of a customer and things like that.
Totally. Stealing one, you're like, they're going to call my customer. I saw them write it down. Totally.
Totally. But I literally remember, you know, sitting around there and, you know, feeling like in my previous company, you know, we were at top of our game, we're doing a ton of work, blah, blah, blah. And then watching you run a ground game on building a partner ecosystem and eating us for lunch. And then when you were up for sale, you know, seeing the growth that you had and saying, I wish we did that. I remember TJ, you know, you guys coming in there and really leaning into, you know, doing stuff around, you know, managed services in order to drive pipeline for net new sales, and just being so unbelievably envious of, you know, what you guys brought to the table that many people didn't see. And then, you know, as we started talking and people are like, oh, TJ, you know, Rich, or, you know, Nicole, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it would be like, yeah, I know them well. Like, we were trading recipes on WhatsApp yesterday. Like, what do you mean? Like, TJ came to my house for dinner. Like, I met up with Rich over at his house. We were in Chicago. It's like, we didn't know each other. We were the fiercest of competitors in general, but I mean, real friends. Our WhatsApp group amongst the legends as it goes down, I mean, it's, you know, it's everything from banter around industry trends to literally, you know, trading recipes. It's hysterical.
Totally.
I remember when you guys added me to the WhatsApp group, because I was the last one, and I was like, I fucking arrived. I'm in the WhatsApp group. I'm in
Were you at it? I thought we were all on it.
No, because my first PAB was with Catherine. So when you guys, because remember, you and JB and Adam, and then because Billy, Nava's always been there. And when you guys added me, and the shit that we were doing in the middle of PAB, like,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
It was. We're like, okay, are we gonna like call bullshit and fuck this poor guy up that just spent a week working on this deck, or are we gonna let it go?
Who's gonna blow this one up? Who's turning?
Like, we really like him, and like, dude, I remember when Lidiani came in and didn't know Einstein was like 5 different products, and we were like, we're gonna give her a pass. She's only been here 3 months, so.
The greatest Pat moment ever. I love the you know, conversation from Catherine of looking for perspective on how to make it work. I'd equally love to talk about all the years before it worked, you know, what went there, and, you know, Jim Lynch rolling with the punches on, you know, product feedback. But my all-time favorite was the real-time poll.
I think you were the one that brought in the real-time polls. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got really into TJ. I think you were on the PAB. If not, it was the year before.
No, I wasn't part of this.
I was doing some stuff on the speaker circuit. I got really into real-time polls. We had finally turned the corner on the PAB after years of like every year we would get together and be like, well, what happened to all the stuff we talked
Talk
about
about the
last year?
same stuff again. Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And then they were like, basically, you don't like it? Why don't you guys present? And we were like, all right, let's do it. So we like split up topic areas. All the different partners were presenting on industry trends, presenting on feedback on the product, presenting on ideas for the roadmap. It was awesome. And I was on the conference circuit that year. I was getting in these real-time polls, and I literally ran a session. They had just finished telling us about all the changes that they made to, I think it was customer success or something like that. How now it was all fixed. And then the next session, we like ran a real-time poll of how many of the partners think that the blah, blah, blah department, I won't mention any names, is working well. And you got Ebling in the room, you got Jeff Barnett, you got Griffin, you got Soup to Nuts.
That's
and it
an
was
anonymous poll, which, so.
100% of the group agrees that it's not working well as it sits today. 100% of the group thinks that is caused by the way things have been partnering together. But
that was a big fight. Like that was a fight for years, and that was, I think, maybe before you were on, TJ. But remember, Adam, like the fights we had, like whose customer is it? It's both of our customers. No, it's our customer, and that was battle royale. Like,
well, that's why I get kicked out of the club in the early days, which I still don't think I've openly told that story when. After working on Gardeners, but no, I love the Pabs. I missed them. I missed that stuff. What I missed most wasn't really the Pab. It was the lead up to the Pab, the dinner before the Pab, and after the Pab, when we all just got in a room, all of us, and Fjord and Kat and Jim Lynch, who basically was like a catcher for a dart team every time. He just stood up there and we just threw darts at him constantly. And he was such a good dude, and that we would all just laugh and giggle and be like, yeah, like we get it. Like we get that you can't make all these changes, but you have to get that we are still accountable for all of this stuff, right? Like have that middle ground. And, it's hard to find people that were as passionate as we all are about what we do. Like, where would we ever find friends like us? Yeah. Like, you think about JB, and then, the dinner that we did in Vegas, right? We invited Dylan Runny in. Adam finally got to meet Dylan. He's such a good kid, and he's just a baby. Actually, did he just turn 30? I think he turns 30 this month, actually.
Was it? I don't know. I have his...
Nava, Portnoy doing his own thing now. I mean, Rob Garf came up. Like, I mean, we're talking like not just legends of our industries, but like some of the best humans that I've ever interacted with. Like, these are really, really good people. So,
we had a ton of fun. I mean, I agree with you. I think it was different, right? We had a ton of fun, and we became, obviously, I think what you said, Adam, like good friends, right? It wasn't just business. And sure, we competed, but I always said co-opetition. Like, there's plenty of business out there for all of us. Like, I mean, we win some, we lose some. Who the fuck cares, right? But we never focused on that. But
I would never go after your clients. I was petrified of Adam when I first met him. I would never, like, I can't I remember Adam coming up to me going, "These are my clients. You know that, right?" I was like, "Yeah, yes I do." Because you don't know me. I'm like the new guy on the scene. I got Marco and Miles and Armstrong at a club till 3:30 in the morning, and it's like I don't know who the fuck these guys are. I just brought them out for a drink. It's not my fault they stayed till the sun came up. I don't know. So,
but I think it was different because the fact that we all invested to try to make it better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it was an ecosystem and a community. Obviously, you have Nava on, you kind of had the Link cartridge side, but then you had the services side. But I mean, I think everyone was surprised. Like, how could you guys work together? Well, because
we cared.
Yeah. And it's to all of our advantage, though, too. We cared about our customers. We cared about the ecosystem. I mean, and so of course we would work together, right? I think people were shocked. Like, remember when they asked, would you, like what you said, Adam, would you guys work in groups? We're like, sure. And I think they were kind of shocked, right? Like, really? Yeah, let us
Well,
present. You know,
but remember, some people in those groups didn't do a fucking thing,
no, it's
right?
true.
I think it's
And
like
we're
it's the
scared to say
class.
anything, like quiet the whole time.
Well, we were a pretty scary group of people to be around once we got on a roll. And when they found out we were all buddies,
Yeah.
that just made it even worse. But it's kind of this, it's the have not stories. Like some of us cared and some people didn't care. And those of us that cared, there was just this gravitational pull that I'm happy to say has fucking lasted me a lifetime of friendships, right? Like
It was
I
more
wouldn't
than
trade it for
business.
anything.
Yeah, it was caring about the customer and caring about people. I agree with you.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
think
like a
that gets lost.
supernova. Like, could we even all get together and run a business together? I don't even know. I think the thing would fucking implode. It'd be like colliding atoms together. No pun intended. But, dude, I think about that all the time. I'm like, I don't even know if this fucking group, like, could we, like, I mean, I don't know. I mean Adam, I got Rich, you got Nava, you got JB. Because I always talked about the five of us, and now we have this new sort of outer circle squad moving their way into our lives. And no, it's been great. I appreciate both of you guys. Adam, I appreciate you coming on. I know that you didn't want to talk about technology, but it was just one question. I thought it was going to be like a 5-minute dialogue.
You're throwing up a softball and it turned into a picnic. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I was back and forth. I had one of two answers: either yeah, absolutely, here's why, or no, totally agree. Yeah, definitely.
It's all good. It's all good. Listen, I appreciate you coming on, Adam. It's good to get a chance, the three of us, to talk. The three of us actually haven't chatted since
been a
Vegas and
long
Shop
time.
Talk. So
Yeah.
and Rich, I always appreciate you and love you and appreciate all your help here on the show. So
Love you too, brother. And great to see you, Adam.
Great
yeah,
to see you guys. This is awesome. Great to catch up. We could banter for hours on work stuff. We could equally banter for an awfully long time on what's going on in life and with families and everything outside.
Totally.
I think we need another episode of the three of us where it's very pointed questions and we just do like 20-minute shorts. Like, let's just pick topics, talk about them for 20 minutes,
Non-technology
and
topics.
set them aside. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Rich doesn't want to swim with the sharks.
Exactly. Too much. I'll learn more though. Let's tackle AI next time. You guys can teach me.
I can't teach you. All right.
Do they have AI on PCs yet?
I'm not sure. My memory. I don't have enough memory.
It's the next version of Windows. It's Windows AI. It'll coming out in the fall.
Exactly.
All right. Listen, anyone still listening?
I mean, I still have my BlackBerry, right? I mean, I miss my BlackBerry. I like touching the keys. I mean, come on. I was in Orange County, and there's a big, huge building with BlackBerry right on there. I'm like, wow, they're still in business. They don't make phones, but they're still in business.
No, they're not in business. That's a new company that just took the name and is probably actually making like a seltzer or something like that. So,
no, I think they're still in business. We have to look that up. Anyway,
I'm sure some pharmaceutical trials company is using Blackberries to collect data. That and fucking iPad ones. But all right, I'm gonna bring this to a close. For anybody still listening, a minute 35-ish into this, thank you for listening and tuning into another episode with Tea with Rich. Rich, again, love you. I appreciate your time here and making time to entertain us. Adam, dude, been looking forward to getting you on here forever. I love that you took time out of your day to shoot the show with us. I actually think we have to do another episode where we just do topics and just rip out some shorts, because if we recorded the preamble, we probably would have started a forest fire in our industry if anybody could have heard all of that stuff. So thank you for coming. I super appreciate it. For anyone still here, thank you for listening in to another episode of Tea with Rich. Everyone have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.